Richard Skipper celebrates. Every show is a celebration. Each show, Richard delivers the artists you love, showcasing what makes them unique. Never gossipy. The antidote to a sometimes hectic world. Now, here's your host, Richard Skipper.
Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of Richard Skipper Celebrates. It's the day after Thanksgiving. We have a lot to be thankful for, even in the midst of this crazy world that we're in. And I'm thankful for two very dear friends of mine. That's Tom and Leslie Orofino. Some of you may have noticed a few months ago, I had the luxury of interviewing my dear friend, Leslie, right here on this very platform. But a few months ago, when we were still able to go out and sit on her nice porch, she had a nice dinner party. And at that dinner party, I met our guest this evening. He is a coach. He's a clinical hypnotist. He is a best-selling author. He is an award-winning actor. And there are so many things that I could go on and on and on. It would take me an hour to try to describe James Mapes to all of you. It's impossible. I can't do it because he's undefinable, as I'm sure he'll tell you later. But before I bring him on, I'd like you to see him in action. Ladies and gentlemen, here is James Mapes.
Let's start off by looking at what the imagination is, because it is the key to everything. It is like an undisciplined, naughty, ADD wild child. The imagination can be taken in any direction. If you watch CNN for 12 hours a day, you're going to have one result in your life. If you do things like you're doing today, you stick around positive people, you're going to have another. But how do you harness the imagination? The imagination also can be very tricky. So let's play a little bit. I'm going to demonstrate, then I'd like you to do this. In a moment, I'd like you, looking down at your index finger, to draw a circle that goes clockwise. Would you do that? Go ahead. Look down at your finger, draw a circle that goes clockwise. Good. Now look down at it. So you're looking down here. You're like a clock. So now move it up, but keep going clockwise. Keep going clockwise. Right up to your eyes. Keep going clockwise. Keep going clockwise. Now look above your head. What direction is it going? What direction? Counterclockwise. Think about it. Clockwise, clockwise. You don't change anything. Counterclockwise. Now you'll be out here doing this for the next 20 minutes. See, I love this because everything changes when you change perspective. That's the way the brain works. Einstein said imagination is more important than knowledge. It is a preview of life's coming attractions. And I love that quote. It's on my wall. I live by it. And I would like to do my least favorite demonstration with you about the imagination. Actually, it's about focus and the imagination. So, I have a lemon. And in a few moments, I'm going to take a bite out of this lemon. Actually, I'm going to count to 3 and take a bite out of this lemon. So what I'd like you to do is pretend, like a child would pretend, that's what the imagination is, that you all have a lemon. And when I bite mine, you bite yours. Now, in order to make this work, like every successful goal-setting strategy, you have to reach back in your past and bring forth that which makes something real. So if you go back, if you've never tasted a lemon, this would be very difficult to do. But if you have, you just go back. The lemon obviously has a shape to it that's oval. It has a color, which is yellow, and it has a surface texture that's a little bumpy, and it has a tart smell, and it has some lemon in it. Focus. Imagine you have a lemon. Play. At the count of 3, I'm going to take a bite out of this. 1, 2, and 3. You put it in your mouth. All right. I need some feedback from you. How many of you, just before, at the very moment, or slightly after I bit the lemon, you had some kind of a reaction to that? Just a show of hands. All right, put them up high so you can kind of look around the room. Good. Excellent. So that's about what? 70%? 80%? Now, if the largest audience I've ever spoken to is 10,000. The smallest is like 10 CEOs. The interesting part, if you were focused and you were playing, you weren't thinking about something else, and you weren't trying, you were just like a child in the moment, you had a reaction. 90% of people always do. What does that mean? You created a biochemical, neurological change in your body with your mind in less than 1/10 of a second. The greatest miracle of the mind, the greatest miracle of being human.
Hello, James. It's nice to have you here
I'm so
tonight.
glad I didn't have to do this on camera. I was ready.
There is a method to my madness. When I saw this clip, I thought we've gone through this year where, for the most part, it seems as if the universe has handed us lemons. And I thought, what a perfect way to kick off the holiday season as we careen now towards 2021 with the way we look at the world. Before we get there, however, I want to ask you, how are you and your beautiful wife, Susan, doing in the midst of this world we find ourselves in right now?
I almost feel guilty to say we're fabulous. Well, from me and for Susan, we are very creative people and we stay busy. I always talk about when someone has a goal, that's just one goal. But if they have 5 goals, I call it like juggling. I call it keeping your balls in the air. And we have so much to do that we write and create most of the day. And by the way, I teach people not to watch the news, but I spend about an hour watching it only for information. So we're doing very good. I make sure that Susan exercises. I used to spend 5 days in the gym, which was my release, but now I had to go out and buy a weight bench and weights, and I don't enjoy it as much. So, and as you know, my wife is a movie critic, so every single night we watch and review a movie 7 nights a week. So again, that lemon thing is so perfect because it's where you focus, it's who you hang around with. As I enjoy meeting you and Leslie. We don't hang around with people that gripe. We hang around with people who are creative and have this extraordinary sense of self and joy. Now, I know that it's really, really tough for people. In my coaching practice, I'm working with those all the time. But there is a way to surmount anything.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that, I was reading, and Paul Allen, who is a philanthropist and co-creator of Microsoft, when he asked you how you were able to go through life wearing so many hats, your response to him, and I may be paraphrasing, is because no one told you that you couldn't do this.
And that's exactly it. And so a buddy of mine brings this up all the time because I'm writing, it's almost embarrassing, an autobiography, and it's by default because someone asked me to do it. But I have been going through tapes since I've been about 5. I mean, my first acting job with Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. What can I say? Mm-hmm. And all these
speaking of your imagination.
I love it. I love it.
Don't take me anywhere I want to go.
And I'm overwhelmed by this was me. I mean, I was coaching someone yesterday on the imposter syndrome, mm-hmm. which for those of you don't know, I interviewed years ago executives, top performing people. 90% of them, 80 to 90% of them felt that they were deceiving people, that they were an imposter. And that's okay, because that's what people do. And how did I do all this stuff? It's because I'm driven. And by the way, one of the values that I am most appreciative of and what I coach people to do is be curious. Mm-hmm. In the world today. be curious. I just bought a book on leadership. It's not fun. I'd rather read a fiction book, but I'm learning a lot about what makes a leader.
Well, I'm reading all this information about you, and I've ordered your book, and it's on its way. I should be getting it any day now. I was hoping that I'd get it before today. But I want to ask you, what kind of a kid were you? I mean, obviously, I imagine you as being this kid full of curiosity. I'd like to go all the way back to your 5-year-old self and the type of environment that you were growing up in at that time.
I'm from the Midwest, from Zion, Illinois. I found out and this will tie into the story. I found in 1995 that my father adopted me. And
Wow.
I wasn't a kid, so this was traumatic. This was, my world shook up. But going back as far as I can remember, my grandfather, who drove a steam engine, was my hero. He taught me to hunt. He taught me to trap, not big game, but small game, and we always ate it. And he taught me loyalty and honor, and he was just a guy. And I didn't realize that he was my substitute father at that time. So even then, I was very curious. Now, as I grew up, I was bullied for 8 years, which was horrible. I was a big guy. I'm 6'3". I didn't like sports. So naturally, I liked magic when I was in high school. So now the bullies picked on me. And I was a bit of a nightmare as a kid. I got in a lot of trouble. I stole a lot of stuff, petty stuff from stores, and got caught. I never, to this day, I'm not sure. I just wanted the thrill, I guess. And and my buddies and I in high school got in trouble because we came up with an idea for remote control, and we call ourselves the Terrible Trio. So someone took land, sea, and air. I got air, and we built all these things. And I discovered potassium chlorate and red phosphorus when I was a sophomore in high school. So that's two chemicals that you combine it's unstable and it blows up. I mean, and I got a lot of trouble with that. But we would attack the mayor of the town on the 4th of July by a remote control boat. I mean, we thank God we didn't hurt anybody. Remote control boat, somebody coming over the land, and I had a plane that I dropped it from the plane and it all blew up. But I was always inventing. I was always reading the Hardy Boys. I was always writing poetry, and I was a terrible student because I have ADD and I have dyslexia. So my brother, 2 years ago, my best buddy, he's 4 years younger than me, he brought me all my report cards from high school, and they basically all said the same thing. He's really a great guy. He's got a lot of potential, but he can't pay attention. I mean, I was always, my mind was wandering. So I was a dicey student,
It's interesting. The other day I interviewed Adrienne Barbeau. As you know, you said that you saw
right.
that. And she said that when she was in the 1st grade, her teacher wrote on her report card, she thinks she's better than anyone else. And she said that wounded her so much that throughout her entire life, she's always gone on with this attitude of feeling that she did not want to come into a room, feeling that she was better than anyone else in that room. And do you feel that these comments that were placed on your report card, whether they were accurate or not, had any bearing on the path that your life took?
Absolutely, because I've always felt I'm stupid. I'm not, there's no joke. I mean, the secret self, because I am as honest as a guy could be, underneath the layers, I've worked very hard to prove myself, which is one of the reasons I've done what I've done. And I've always felt I wasn't bright enough because I can't spell. As Susan, we were walking today, Stu Leonard shopping, and I was lamenting on the way back. I said, there was something on TV about the 5 most NPR, most misspelled words. I couldn't spell any of them. And she's like an English teacher. She said, don't worry, you've got me. I've got, for all my books, I've got people around me, not editors, but people who forgive and correct my spelling and some grammar. I'm much better now because writing, as you know, is you learn as you go. So, but none of that happened. I got kicked out of my first year at college for fighting, and I'm not a fighter. I think it's the only fight I've ever been in, with some Chicago hoods who threatened me. So I had to go live with my aunt in my second year in LaSalle, Illinois, in a junior college. And except for classes, I never left my room. I stayed in my room. I painted, and I listened to musical comedy, and I did my homework for a year. And I raised my GPA from D- to A, and then I went off to go get my bachelor's and master's.
Now, you also have an extensive background as an actor.
Yeah.
When, where, and how did that start? What was the defining moment for you when you decided that this was the career path that you were going to take?
At that time, it was acting saved my life in high school. Our Town was my first play, but it's the only place that I felt accepted.
Can I say something about that?
Yes.
And for our listeners as well, every single person that I have spoken with, myself included, who said that they were bullied in school, ended up in the theater department, and every one of them says the same thing. It's what saved their lives.
Absolutely. And by the way, even when I lecture to corporations now, I say everyone should take an acting class. I mean, even with that, I was blessed, because when I graduated from college with my master's, I was spoiled. As you know, people have everything in college, and I didn't know what to do. I just wanted to be an actor at that time. And I was very creative. I built things, always good with my hands. And I ended up, and I had everything. I acted, directed, designed lights, designed costumes in college. And I remember, it's important. I mean, one of the people that were thrown in my drama department and put under me was Richard Dreyfuss, who was in the costume department. I can't say what he said because it might offend some people, but he said,
"Oh, you can tell me afterwards."
Yeah, this is bullshit. And he walked out of the costume department. He says, "I'm an actor." So I got out of college, and I went to the New Jersey Shakespeare Festival making $15 a week. I had nothing. I mean, I slept under a stage, and they exploited me, which was wonderful. I directed, I acted in 3 plays. And then I was out on tour with Roger Williams. Remember Roger?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And he took me under his wing. I was his technical director. So we go through the tour, and there was a magician on tour who I became friends with, and I just fell in love with magic like acting. And then at the end of the tour, Roger said to me, "Look, I would like you to date my daughter, and I'll send a limo when we go back to California." I said, "Roger, I live with someone, Leonard Goldstone, who, by the way, is a good friend of Susan's now." And he said, "Well, I've got to do something. I want to do something. I'll tell you what, you want to be an actor. So I am going to fly you to New York. I'm going to put you up in a hotel until you get your first job." I'm going to cry telling you this, because this was unbelievable. And he did. Wow. And that was my job. I got with June Havoc, Gypsy Rose Lee's sister, and spent a year in New Orleans acting and being a master carpenter. And then I met who would turn out to be my first wife. We came back to New York. I did soaps. And then I toured and did off-Broadway and Bus and Truck and all that stuff. But then I had an opportunity that a friend of mine offered me, and I turned it down. And my ex-wife said, if you do this, you are never going to live with yourself. To produce, direct, and design 6 musical comedies on a 3-month world tour. And it was the only place. Now they do bits and pieces of musicals. These were full-blown musicals. So they gave me a budget, but I didn't know what the budget was. So because I knew how to do this stuff, I ordered all this lumber. I brought my own tools. I cast myself in 2 of the musicals. Yeah. And the budget turned out to be $10,000. I spent $100. But it was too late by the time I got on the tour. So on the tour was a mentalist by the name of David Berglass, who is probably one of the greatest mentalists ever, who I didn't know what a mentalist was. I mean, he was reading minds on stage. Then there was Jean-Marc, who was an illusionist, and there was a close-up magician for 3 months. Well, I died and gone to heaven, because here I am working 18 hours a day, building sets, directing, learning magic, and That changed my life, because when I came back to New York, I immediately went up, and this is 19. Oh no, I decided I had to produce a theater, right?
Mhm.
Now I'm going to produce a theater, and I came up with this what I thought was a brilliant idea. Where could I produce a theater that would make money? And I came up, well, what's the biggest family-oriented together activity? Was camping. I said, wow, I'm going to produce a theater on a campground, and it's a built-in audience, I thought. The year I raised money, I borrowed money, and I did a wonderful true repertory where, as you know, there's three things running in rep: Spoon River, You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, a musical that I wrote, and that was the year of the gas strike. So it was
on even number days or odd number days.
Rep?
Oh, I know it's a joke. Sorry.
Okay.
That tells you how old I am.
Well, it was odd number. Now that you're mentioning it. Okay. So then I came back, and I auditioned. I got cast in Arthur Storch, who was a wonderful director, at the opening of Syracuse Stage. That was 1974, and Waiting for Lefty. So I'm up there with snow up to my rear end, making a lot of money. $350 a week at that time was a lot of money for me. And I turn on, and there's Kreskin on TV, right? And I go, I can do that. I can do that. So I made up some phony publicity, and I put together this little show, and I went around to all the nightclubs, supper clubs, and I'm saying, I've been around the world on this world cruise and blah, 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 all bullshit. And one guy said, and he probably knew the truth anyhow, he said, I'll tell you what, you do 2 shows every Saturday night, and I will give you a free meal and booze for 2 people. Now, to me, I'm a starving actor. I said, sure, that sounds like a good deal to me. And that was the beginning of my mentalist show. 2 years later, I was bending keys on Merv Griffin, but I was still acting. And then I started to you want me to just keep going here?
Oh, keep going. I'm fascinated by this.
All right. So in 1973, and I'm going to go back to June Havoc in New Orleans, because she brought in, and you would probably know most of the people that she brought in. They're vaudevillians and the wonderful kind of performers. She brought in Sam Vine, Sam Vine was a hypnotist, but Las Vegas, cruise ships, and he did a benefit for her. And I watched this hypnotist work, and scared the living bejesus out of me, and I got up and left the room. And then my wife-to-be, my girlfriend, was hypnotized on stage. I said, this is bullshit. I'm from Illinois. This is like the tool of the devil. But I couldn't stay out of the room. I'd come back, I'd leave, I'd come back.
Go back to that moment. The first time that you hypnotized someone, was it your girlfriend?
No.
Okay.
No, it was because, no, it wasn't at all. Because I ran away from that, but I couldn't let it go. So here I am acting, doing mentalism. And then I said, you know what? I have to learn clinical hypnosis. How do I do that? So there was a wonderful magic shop called Tannen's in New York, which is the gold standard.
I remember that was here when I came to New York.
Yeah, that was 79.
It was still there.
72, 73, 74. It was a big deal. And so I met someone who said, I know someone, he's very much like Freud. And I went, who teaches clinical hypnosis. He had written 60 books. So I met him. I'm 6'3". He was like 5'2", and with his goatee. And he looked ever the hypnotist. And he said, you really want to learn? And I said, no, I really do. He took me under his wing, and I studied with him for over 3 years. And in 1974, in addition to all this stuff, I established the New York Hypnosis Center, which I did clinical hypnosis. And I did that phase of my life, but not only for the first. Explain
to everyone who don't know what that means when you say that you're a clinical hypnotist.
Okay.
As opposed to just,
Okay. The state hypnotist, which I became later. Well, okay. The clinical hypnotist, the way the mind works pretty much is what the lemon demonstration was about. The subconscious controls us, but we don't know what that means, but there's ways to program it. So I developed the skill to be able to put people in a state of mind. I don't like to use the word trance, but a state of mind. And I should tell your audience that everybody that's watching this and everybody that will watch it has been hypnotized. There's no one who hasn't been. You read a book, you forget you're reading the book. You watch a movie, you forget you're watching a movie. You're watching a cabaret act, you're in whatever it is, a conversation. So that state is a state of high suggestibility. So when you know how to do that, and then you know how to form suggestions, you can help people break through fears, phobias, quit smoking, and so forth. So the first 3 years of my 12-year stint at the New York Center, I did weight smoking and self-confidence, memory recall, and maybe one or two other things. And then I got bored.
Is there a particular person that is easier to hypnotize, or has there ever been a situation where you were absolutely not able to hypnotize someone?
Not clinically, but we'll get to that. The best subjects are people who are highly intelligent, who are able to focus to the exclusion of everything else, and who trust themselves. Those are the three prerequisites.
Mm-hmm.
So the easiest people to do this with are actors, singers, musicians, jugglers, athletes, because when an athlete is a professional athlete, and probably a number of other people who are able to focus to the exclusion, doctors, surgeons. A surgeon goes into state, what's called state, when he or she operates. I mean, that's it. That's their world. That's their bubble. Does that make sense? Does that raise any other questions?
Since I've got a lot of questions that are running around in my head.
Right. Stop me anytime you want. So I got interested.
This is maybe a step beyond the hypnosis. And I do not, and we're not going to go there. We're not going to get political, but we are living in a climate right now where so many people are easily led to believe whatever is put in front of them. And it really is dividing this country. I'd like to know what your thoughts are on that in terms of the way that people are perceiving external forces that are coming at them on a 24/7 basis now.
Well, there's a couple thoughts about that. One is, I believe the two greatest hypnotists in the world were Gandhi and Hitler. And they used different, what are called modalities. I did something for many years with my stage show. Every election cycle, I always hypnotized, 70, 80 people. I would always have 20 on stage, the rest of the audience. So on stage, I would say, and they're like, they look like they're asleep, but they're not. So they're like, whoa. And I would say, if you are a staunch Democrat, raise your hand, right? So if you are a staunch Republican, raise your hand. What I do is I'd choose a Democrat and a Republican, and I'd switch identities. And I'd say, for example, to a Democrat, when you open your eyes, you are a Republican going back 3 generations. You can defend your position. You can defend your beliefs without getting angry, by the way. And then I'd do the same thing with the other one. Wide awake, I'd give them both a mic and created 5-minute debate. Everybody thought I had set it up because it was so believable. Now, that could tell you a lot about what is a belief system. We're not born with a belief system. We're born with a couple things that are cemented. We're born with a fear of heights, being dropped, and a fear of heights. Sometimes
that's one of the reasons why I wanted to go back at the beginning of this interview and ask you to go back to your 5-year-old self. Because for me, the first 5 years of our lives, we're forming who we are.
Yes.
And then when we turn 6 or right around that time frame, we're thrust into a whole new world with different people.
Yes.
And it sometimes that affects who we become as we go through life.
Oh, absolutely. It's called a paradigm. It's like looking through a filter. And as long as you look through that filter, you're going to see what you believe is reality. My job is to get people to switch the filter and make the invisible visible. And by the way, back when I was 5, up to 5, my mother was absolutely terrific. She was a registered nurse. And I never figured out why I wasn't close to my father, but I said it earlier, and my mother, whatever I was interested in, she would go out and earn extra money. I tried taxidermy. She sent me to painting class. She sent me to ice skating school or whatever it was. I had singing lessons. I wasn't very good. I had clarinet lessons. I was even worse. And I think there's like 6 or 7 or 8 things. And I remember when I hit it as a hypnotist and a mentalist before the corporate thing, which was the cash flow, really, that was much later, is my mother said, "Oh, I'm so happy you found your calling, because your dad and I never thought you would settle on anything." And I said, "What makes you think I have?" And it was worrisome for her.
Yeah.
But you're right. And the audience know this. It's good. We're formed in the first 6 years of our life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why parenting is so important, because children are the best hypnosis subjects in the world. They take in everything, and criticism can devastate someone, the wrong kind of criticism.
Mm-hmm.
And people really have an issue about communicating, and I hear it all the time. I go, it's like, for example, the 2 words, "don't fail," right, are the most destructive words in the world, because the suggestion is the picture is failing. It's actually it's a hypnotic suggestion to fail. Yeah. And so anything that says don't be a fool. Don't be this. Your picture is what? Right? If I say to you, "don't fail," what's the picture? Because everything is about visualization. Everything is about the images we carry around. It isn't about anyone else. So you're right. I was formed in partially to explore, be curious, and be honorable later in life.
Wow. And, so, moving beyond the clinical hypnosis, you are you're mesmerizing right here, a motivational speaker. How did that aspect of your life begin?
Well, when I was doing clinical, I thought to myself, what can I do to make money? I certainly wasn't acting. Yeah, I was making money, but, not that much money. And so I thought, what can I do that very few people can do? And I said, I think I can be a stage hypnotist. And so I put together a stage show and failed. And when I say failed, for my first 3 stage shows, I was booed off the stage. I had beer bottles thrown at me. I had the worst experiences of my life, but I wouldn't quit. And I'll jump forward. So then in 1970,
well, let me ask you, what was it within yourself that kept you going forward even after failing?
Well, I refused to fail.
Mm-hmm.
I was just, if you feel you're dumb anyhow, you're going to keep plugging that.
You're ahead of the game.
Yeah, it's like writing a book. I don't know how to write a book, the first book. It's you do it and you learn from other people, you study other people, you make your mistakes, you bounce back. And it took, I don't just bounce back easily, but you grieve and you whine and you complain and you go back and say, what didn't work? But when it did work, when the stage stuff did work, it was a miracle. Then, because I'm an actor and a writer, I put together a script, because no hypnotist, they were all nightclub actors, and I wasn't. I wanted to do big audiences in universities and art centers. So I wrote a script called Journey into the Imagination, which is a space journey from blast off to touchdown with lights, sound, and music. It's actually a 2-hour show with no intermission. And in that venue, I do everything from age regression to past life regression to really some edgy things. That's why I didn't know what clip you were going to show, because there's another clip out there about me telling somebody they're in a box and I offer them $2,000 if they can get out of the box, but they can't get out of the box.
Wow.
So the stage show, so to answer your question, the stage show got people in the colleges saying, what else can you do? Can you do a motivational seminar? And I said, yes. And then I went home and I went, oh, crap. How do I do that? So I took the stuff I knew from hypnosis, studied a bunch of other motivational things, put together a workshop that became national called Positive Self-Image Training. And that later morphed into one called Choices, and then another one called Quantum Leap Thinking, which is down the line a little bit. So that was turned into a 2-day residency in colleges. So I'm doing 10 shows a week and 5 seminars attached to 5 of those shows. So I was burned out most of the time. And then in 1977, out of the blue, I won Campus Entertainer of the Year, the first one ever given. Well, I had a manager for 37 years, and that was it. We kept raising my price because I couldn't do all the work. And then somebody in the college said, my dad would like to know if you could do a corporation. I said, sure. And I went home and I went, what do I do in a corporation? I'm not going to do a hypnosis show. So I took what I had and I created what became Quantum Leap Thinking. And then that gave me my financial security because they embraced it. That was the first book. And it was all about creativity.
Well, I was watching one of your clips today, and you talk about being asked to tap dance when you had never tap danced before. And when I came to you, I was always taught when you're asked if you can do something, you say yes, and then you figure out how you're going to get to that yes.
Yes.
And there you are. And that's pretty much how you've led your entire life. I love the fact that you've always said that no is not part of the parameters around.
Well, it's not acceptable unless I don't want to do it.
But for me, it's going through life. I say that life boils down to one of two things: yes and no. Yes, I'm going to buy your product. Yes, I'm going to come see your show. Yes, I'm going to, book you. So you're going through life knowing what your parameters are. I want to talk about the parameters of the other people that are around you for our listeners tonight. Those people who go through life and everything is a no. So let's talk about going through those waters.
Well, are we talking about people I coach or just in general, people like that?
In general, people who just say no to everything. No, you can't do that.
Okay, my playground in my first book and my most recent book, my second book and my most recent book is fear. That's my playground. Mm-hmm. And so my job, I believe there are only 2 emotions in life, love and fear, period. Mm-hmm. And so everything you could say, well, where does this emotion fit in? Just put love, fear, and put everything under the categories. So when one exists, when fear exists, love cannot. When love exists, fear cannot. Now, and fear, and also love is creativity. So that, fear creates creativity. And there are 3 kinds of fear. There is what I'll call delicious fear, which I'm sure you've experienced. I do it by racing cars or scuba diving or getting in front of a big audience or jumping out of a plane. That's delicious fear to me. Mm-hmm. Then there is primitive fear. And most people don't think about this. Primitive fear is what we are programmed. Every single person listening in this world, listening here in the world is, we are programmed for fight or flight in the subconscious. It's not about our linear logical. This has nothing to do with that because we can't get into this without going into a seminar, but the unconscious rules us. It does not think, and it can't tell the difference between a real or an imagined experience. So my job as a coach is, and I'll get back to this, is to get people to recognize their fear. Rejection, change, success, failure, commitment, poverty are the main ones, not death and so forth, but those are the big ones. So primitive fear, fight or flight. Then there's the one that messes everyone up. I call it illusory fear. And illusory fear is like, let's see how I could put this on. It's putting on a pair of glasses that you see. I don't even know. how to put this as a metaphor. You see fear. Let me give you an example. It's easier. Illusory fear causes you to create the fear without you knowing it.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if you are afraid of rejection, nothing wrong with that. I don't know anyone who's not to some degree. However, if unbeknownst to you, fear of rejection rules your life, you're going to create isolation. Rejection is isolation. It's all about isolation. So when you think, what would you have to do to create isolation? Well, you could become a bully, then people don't want to be around you. You can become jealous, which is all fear. Then the other person goes away. You can reject someone before he or she rejects you. You feel like you're doing this to feel safe, but that's the fear manipulating you. The bottom line is you end up alone. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, nothing wrong with that. If you fail, you learn, you apply your lesson. But if the illusionary fear rules you, you won't take risks. Therefore, you can't fail. So you think you're safe, but you haven't learned. Or you take enormous risks that are stupid and you fail. So we can go through all the fears. Fear of success, same thing. It has fear of change. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, if you take your hands, or your people, put your hands like this, just for fun. Okay, now take them apart and move them over one digit and put them back together. And what's the difference in your feeling? How does that feel?
I mean, there's a tension there that wasn't there before.
Right.
What you're looking for?
Well, if you move it over one digit, it's also awkward.
Right. Oh,
it's uncomfortable.
Yes.
What most people don't realize is that there is no change for you or for the individual without that happening. So every part of a person, unless they've worked on themselves, unless they know how the mind works, this is all mechanics, they go back to that. What's comfortable? It doesn't matter if they've been divorced 5 times or they're bullied, or they're beat up in their marriage, or they're fail at their jobs. Let's keep it safe. And look at the political climate today. A lot of this has to do with they don't want to try anything. I mean, the defense mechanism, to me, I watch and I encounter this. I have a great kind of communication about people, so I never argue with them. I just go, somebody says, well, what, blah, 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 and I go, you're right. No, you didn't hear what I said, blah, 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 blah. And I said, no, you're absolutely right, because they are.
I can't believe you say that, because I've done the same thing. And the reaction is unbelievable.
Isn't it?
Every time.
I call it, I'm big in martial arts, and I call this Aikido of the mind, is you never, the worst, sometimes I'll get a person in front of an audience and I'll say, push against me. So they're pushing and I'm pushing. And then all of a sudden I say, no matter what I do, keep pushing. And I take them and they push, and eventually I'm doing a pirouette. I'm dancing, because as long as they push, I can get them to do anything I want them to do. They stop, I stop. And I call it Aikido of the mind. It's the perfect communication tool. Listen, do you want to be right, or do you want to be happy? And to me, that's everything.
Well, it's very interesting. And I think that social media, for the most part, has given everyone this idea that they have a huge platform. And it's one thing to have that huge platform, but it's another thing to take your huge platform and try to push someone else's huge platform out of the way. For example, if someone has a certain mindset or belief, and you go to their Facebook page and you give a totally opposite view, there's going to be friction there.
Oh, absolutely.
But the question is, what is it within each of us? I've been guilty of this as well, I'll admit it, of feeling that I have to say anything. If that's what they believe, let them believe what they believe, as long as it's not going to affect my life. And for the most part, it's not going to.
I go back, do you want to be right, or do you want to be happy? I say those all the time to my clients or people I'm coaching or seminars, because the bottom line is it's the ego. ego to me, and I talk a lot about it in one of my books, is there's nothing valuable about the ego. It's like a vampire. It can never have enough. It can never have enough food, enough sex, enough companionship, enough stuff. It's always and it's the feeling of either you have abundance or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fear mentality. So my job in coaching is to get people to change their paradigm or their belief system.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about the year that we've just experienced. One of the reasons that I really wanted to sit down and talk with you tonight, you said something very interesting at the beginning of, and I have interviewed, I think you're like my 86th interview this year since I started doing these. And I'm finding that with 90% of the artists that I interview, when I ask them how they're really doing in the midst of this, they're doing great. They're doing great because they are creative, they are creating, and they have a focus that's focused on their creativity as opposed to what's going on outside our doors. So I want to take you back. Today, believe it or not, marks 260 days since the theater shut down, March 12th. So I want to go back to March 11th, March 10th, what your calendar looked like at that point, because you are one of the most sought after motivational speakers in the country. What did your calendar look like prior to everything starting to shut down?
Very busy. What does it look like now? Now, I could go online. I'm putting a podcast together. It's going to be later, but that's pivoting. I am a performer at heart. That doesn't matter. See, people say, well, how do you do so much? But I say, look, if you look at acting, you're getting a reaction. Mm-hmm. If you look at performing, my hypnosis or mentalism show, it's an audience. You get applause. You make a difference. I always have a message. So not being able to do that, I've had to pivot to put more into how can my writing make a difference. So I'm working on a screenplay. I'm working on another book. And that's what I'm doing, because the choices, and God bless many of my friends, it's like I hate to even get into it because it's so tragic, but from the ushers to, everybody is suffering. And so many of my friends live hand to mouth, like most actors do, mm-hmm. most performers do. How do you do a live hypnosis show? I mean, when I started, there were 3 of us. That's why I had such a career. Now somebody came up, wisely so, and I would never wanted to do it. I thought about it, said, oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to teach people how to be stage hypnotists. So they churn out about 50 people a year, literally don't know what the hell they're doing. Because with all the lightness, as I said, I do age regression on stage. People can watch this on YouTube, where I'll have Richard Skipper sign his name, and then I'll take him back to 11. You open your eyes, you sign your name, and I talk to you. You are 11. You're not remembering being 11. And then I take you back to 5. Do you have a party? Who's there? Blah, 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 blah. You are 5. So my specialty, and what I didn't say, on the last years of my clinical practice, which I still incorporate, my specialty became age regression. Taking people back in the computer of their past to heal, to identify, to let go, to forgive, whatever needs to be. And it changes. It's like, I don't know, a time collapse, because if you change something back when you were 15, it collapses time. So you open your eyes and you don't see the world the same way, because you've changed that experience. So when I do stage hypnosis, I do that. It's almost as much fun as I do dancing and I do all this stuff, but I also do that. And I have people sign their name. I do past life regression. I don't necessarily believe in it, but It's like miracles on stage. So you've got to be very careful and very conscious and know that people are very delicate. So when all these hypnotists were unleashed on the world and I was making a huge fee, then all of a sudden somebody's charging $500 for a show. And people look at as a hypnotist as a hypnotist. I mean, who's going to pay thousands of dollars when they can get a hypnotist?
Mm-hmm.
So that I had to pivot. And my pivot was to go in the corporate market.
Well, now, because we are in this new paradigm,
Yes.
How are you reaching your audience, and how is your audience reaching you?
Well, the best I can do right now, and I'm doing it as big as I can, is I do something called an almost monthly newsletter. And they're very potent articles. And I've got thousands and thousands of people that read these. And they've asked me to put together a series of 5 to 7 minute podcasts, one a week, that each has a story, a lesson, and an assignment. So that's what I'm working on doing. Excuse me, I'm whatever. I got water, but I get so excited and then I start straining my voice, and I'm not a professional singer like you know. So my plan and what I'm writing, I mean, this is an everyday occurrence with me for the past 2 months. That is how I'm going to get to people, is doing one a week, getting an audience, 5 to 7 minutes, video, ripping the audio out, doing the audio. I'm starting off with a lemon, so people have a foundation. I'm also thinking about doing an online seminar. But I'm not enthused about that right now. I'm going for what I'm enthused about.
Now, I want to end. We're almost at the end of our show, which I cannot believe, because I'm going to have you back sometime if you'll come back.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. But I want to pretty much wrap up where we began, and that's with the lemon. One of the things that I love watching this video clip that we started the show with is the visual reaction from the audience the moment you bring the lemon out. Before you even explain to them where we're going to go with this lemon, just the image of the lemon and the thoughts that are in people's heads, because that is just a very big reaction from everyone in the audience. Going through life with everything that's ahead of us and the way that we are dissecting our news now, the way things are coming, the way we look at our politicians on both sides of the fence. What's your message to everyone right now?
If I go back to the lemon, it's very simple to me, is the reason they have the reaction is they focus on the lemon, right? So you can focus wherever you want. That's the beauty of the mind. That's why I say at the beginning, the imagination is like a ADD wild child. It's going to go where it wants to go unless you use your gift of focus to focus on what is nurturing, what can make a difference, what turns you on. And people say, well, that's easier said than done. And I'm going, no, it's easier done than said. You have free choice. Well, you do and you don't, but I won't get into that. That's another lecture. But you have choice where to focus, and above all, who you surround yourself with. As part of my assignments in my coaching practice, I talk about who do you surround yourself with in your life. And this is, you'll appreciate this. It's and it's a good example. We've lost many of my friends: Richard Lawrence, Jack Lawrence, Haley Stoddard, Whit Connor, Lee Richardson, all these big, huge people. They were in our close circle. So if we had a dinner party, and I'll just say, they go off and they write a hit song, we come back and celebrate them. There's no jealousy. There's nothing inside of us that goes, oh, how come I can't? I go off. I was doing a Star Trek movie. I came back. Richard Lawrence had thrown me a party. Let's celebrate you. So who do you surround yourself with? Mm-hmm. And if you're not surrounding yourself with people who have your best interests, who are positive, who are loving, you've got to reevaluate your life, because that influences your brain. Do you know we can change our brain in 5 minutes? I leave it at that.
Absolutely. We are at the end of our show. And before we end the show tonight, I want to say that I'm grateful for everyone who took the time to be here tonight. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please follow jamesmapes.com. Go to his YouTube channel as well. Sign up for that. If you enjoyed the show tonight, and I hope you did, please go to my website, richardskipper.com, and sign my guest book with your thoughts about the show. That helps to boost me in other markets. I also want to let everyone know that tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock, I will be celebrating Sean Patrick Murtaugh. Those of you who know him know he is an amazing talent. Those of you who don't know him, you'll find out tomorrow. I also end every show by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Go to your Facebook friends list and look at your friends list and go to the 9th name and reach out to that person and call them. Let them know what they mean in your lives. Not with an email, not with a text. Call them. And I want to give you the last word, James, tonight. Anything you want to talk about anything that we've covered tonight that you want to expound on, anything we didn't talk about that you wish that we had, or just any message that you want to put out to everyone who's watching now.
I'm going to piggyback on yours, because one of the things that uplifts our spirit is giving and doing. And what you just said, I do every day. And I call 2 people, and no expectation of anything. I don't want anything. And I let them talk. And I have had more feedback that makes it up. It's a selfish act. That's all I got to say, is that I feel so good afterwards because I've made a difference. And making a difference, get the focus off yourself and start to reach out to other people to heal them. Maybe that's a little corny, just to say,
no, I'll take it.
Yeah, pat them on the back, give them a hug, virtual hug. But that's what I'd like to leave with.
Thank you. Have a great night, and an even better tomorrow.